the mother of all omelets here, Jack. Can't fret over every egg.
You're not greedy.
Am I finally getting through?
You're batshit insane!
Gonna need some super glue to fix that one. But that's not as much damage as my heart and soul after being ripped apart by a skew that outskewed my own list. And today, we are going to talk about that, dear viewer. Today, we are going to be discussing the story about how 3 Lord of Skulls was defeated by 4 Great Unclean Ones.
What's the retail on one of those?
More than you can afford, pal.
Smoke 'em.
So, let's set the stage. The local Tokyo 40K community usually hosts monthly RTTs. These happen usually slightly outside of downtown. I wanted to go, try out Berserker Warband, and showcase 3 Lord of Skulls running around the field like idiots. Today we will be talking about round 1. And round 1 was Berserker Warband versus Plague Legion. Let's talk a little bit about Plague Legion. Plague Legion is very funny. What it is essentially it gives demons the options to play a little bit like Tyranids, where you get every turn a little bit of a mini Shadow in the Warp, where you can like pick one unit on the opponent's side and battle shock. Usually that comes with certain sets of modifiers. In certain situations you're taking that at -1, and then if you fail you will take mortals. The list itself isn't particularly killy, but what it's really good at is sort of stunning the opponent, neutering their key units, and then just outscoring them into the sun. My opponent is a very good pilot, and he knows that even though the 4 Great Unclean Ones is the gimmick about the list, a lot of the backbone of the list revolves around the Plague Bearers, placing them up, putting them on objectives, and they're the ones that are going to be doing a majority of the scoring. He sets up his Plague Bearers pretty aggressively. He wants them to go onto the No Man's Land objectives as fast as he can, and I take notice of that. I set up one of my Lord of Skulls to be placed pretty aggressively. I get to go first. Very lucky. I decide to push up my Lord of Skulls, take an angle on his Plague Bearers, and an absolute dice spike of shooting lifts the entire 10-man brick of Plague Bearers right up into the air. They are dead. In all seriousness, it didn't really slow him down. By the time that it swung over to his turn, he basically took the other 3 Plague Bearer units that he had, staged them, and then slowly lumbered the rest of his triple Great Unclean Ones towards me. And so, what effectively he did during his turn was that he put me on a timer. This is where I probably panicked a little bit. The Lord of Skulls pushed into center, and it charged into the Great Unclean One. Now, the Great Unclean One is a very, very interesting datasheet. On paper, it is T12 with a 4-up invuln and has 20 wounds. It's a little bit tanky until you start reading the effects, where actually what is written is that it's in fact T13 with a 4-up invuln as well as a 6-up funeral pain. Now the Lord of Skulls does actually have a fairly decent melee profile. We are talking about 6 dice, 7 on the charge, a strength 16 base melee that would go up to strength 18, AP 4, 8 damage flat. This thing can single target remove knights. I charged it into the Great Unclean One, and no damage was dealt. Now, with all of that being said, I wasn't out of the game just yet. The score is incredibly close. In fact, I was actually leading by about 5 points. And on top of that, even though one of my LOS was essentially dead, there's still 2 more alive, both with very high damage output. 2 good phases of melee honestly could swing the DPS race back into my favor, or so I thought. Because I didn't account for Rodigus, and more importantly, I didn't account for Kairos. Now, Rodigus by himself does not lift a Lord of Skulls. He does maximum 4 damage swing and only has 7 dice at that. What's more, I have a stratagem for 2 CP that allows me to -1 damage in melee. You know, mathematically, it's physically impossible. Unfortunately, Zinch told me that it was possible. To start, Kairos dropped in right behind Rodigus. Kairos himself doesn't have any crazy shooting into vehicles. In fact, mostly the reason why he was placed there from a shooting perspective was to shoot off the Chaos Spawn on mid. That's not what mattered. What mattered was the fact that Kairos has a 12-inch vect, meaning that anything within 12-inch range of him, if targeted by a stratagem, becomes +1 to cost. So that 2 CP stratagem became 3 CP, and if I were to spend it, I would immediately go down to 0, and then I would lose anything on the crack. So, charging Rodigus in, demons have one last little ace up their sleeve. If you ever read any of the Plague Demons datasheets, very often a lot of them happen to have lethal hits built into their weapons somewhere. This is just a very common theme for Nurgle as a whole. Rodigus is no exception. His strike profile happens to have lethals built into it. What is very funny about Plague Legion is they have a stratagem that allows you to explode the lethals on 5s as opposed to just 6s. So the Rodigus charged, got in, fought first, rolled his 7 dice, and got 3 5s and 2 6s. He then proceeded to get 1 more through on the wound roll, handed me 6 dice, smiled, said, "Take that on your invuln," and gave me a little wink as if to say, "Good luck, you're In all seriousness though, actually the guy that I was playing with was actually really cool. He didn't actually say that. I'm just mostly doing this for exaggeration purposes. If you want to actually figure out what the banner was like during the game, take a look at the position of Rodigus and the Lord of Skulls and the orientation that they are faced. I think that will sum up mostly the energy that we were communing at. Now, here's the insane part. In order for my Lord of Skulls to survive, I needed to save one of the invulns, which I did. This combined with shooting put that Lord of Skulls on 1 health. 1. Fortunately, 1 is all we need. I might as well have had 20. It didn't matter in that sense. What this meant was that I had an opportunity to swing back. It meant that I had an opportunity to shoot, and it meant that I had an opportunity to tank a little bit of damage before fighting on death. Or so I thought. If you remember at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that Plague Legion happens to have that mini shadow in the warp thing, where they can cast a battle shock test onto really any unit that they choose. So, in order for my Lord of Skulls to apply any form of pressure, either on primary or on a point, I would have to first make that battle shock test, which would be at -1.
Hello there.
All I had to do was roll a 7 on 2 dice. I rolled a 6.
しゃっくりって100回出すと死んじゃうらしいよ。
もう99回目。
Now, when you are in the shadow of chaos, your models, when failing a leadership test, take D3 mortal wounds.
あ、終わった。
自爆するしかねえ。
Honestly, from there, with the demon player having all of his pieces still on the board and me only left with one of my key Lord of Skulls, it was really easy for him to spread out, take control of the board, and honestly just kite me for the rest of the game as per his game plan. And with a insane max, literally max scoring that he physically could have done in round 5, he pushed the game, swung it back to his favor, and got the win. The game itself ended on a score of 90-66.
That, dear viewers, is where our story ends. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I really hope it didn't come off as some sort of weird rant about me getting luck sacked or something like that, because it really wasn't. The game was incredibly close, and my partner was an incredibly good pilot. If you guys are curious about more Lord of Skulls, there's obviously the video that came out, and also some more to come. So hopefully you guys can look forward to that. But until then, this is going to be all for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time. Stay safe. Bye-bye.